Today's little project, just how loud are the cabins of different types of common commercial transport? Over the last year I've been compiling data on different types of aircraft as well as a few trains. Why is it important? Well, it's probably not. But as an acoustic engineer in a previous life, I was also interested to know if there's any risk of hearing damage, especially on long-haul flights. I'm going to get straight into it. Each aircraft or train has a 30-second recording of cabin noise, with the integrated LAEQ or average level given. Planes are ranked noisiest to quietest, trains are at the end. A detailed explanation is right at the end at about 9 minutes. Righto, so now for the technical details. The current Australian OH&S legislated levels for occupational noise are 85 dBA for 8 continuous hours. This reduces to 83 dBA for 12 hours or 81 dBA for 19 hours, which corresponds to the world's longest flight. So note that Australian legislation covers occupational noise, which is the workplace, so this covers pilots and aircrew only, but not passengers. As noted, the longest flight in the world is 19 hours, or 15,300 kilometres from Singapore to New York. That's a long time to be exposed, and A350-1000s can do that flight, and we know that from my measurements and from published papers, cabin sound pressure levels are 82 dBA, which means that crew and passengers are technically being exposed to the lower level limit of harmful noise exposure for that duration. In reality, crews have breaks, passengers have sleep, hopefully using earplugs or noise-cancelling headphones. This reduces the likelihood of noise-induced hearing loss. Still, it's a concern that this could even be a possibility. A Qantas pilot, who's a friend of mine, told me that the A350 is the mainstay workhorse of most fleets, which means that the most common plane is also the noisiest. Noise inside non-workplaces, for example theatres and auditoriums, etc., they're covered by Australian standards, but they're not covered by legislation. You've got to remember that standards are only a guide of recommended best practice. They're not the law unless they're referred to in an act, like Safe Work. Instead, non-workplace noise is covered by ordinances issued by local council or the police, which in the case of aircraft, by the manufacturers themselves. This means that aircraft manufacturers like Boeing and Airbus are only regulated to protect pilots and aircrew and not passengers. But as noted, if you cover aircrew who are in the workplace, then passengers are also covered by default. Aircraft noise in Australia is governed by the 2018 Air Navigation or Aircraft Noise Regulation. However, this only governs noise emissions from airborne plane to ground-based receivers like residential homes and doesn't cover internal cabin noise levels. For the noise levels heard at ground level, the Air Navigation Aircraft Noise Regulations use a metric called EPNDB, or Effective Perceived Noise Level in decibels. The EPNDB is used to drive legislation to determine airport opening hours and policies like noise sharing to the general public at ground level for different oriented runways. So there's no legislation protection to passengers inside cabins. It's more like a sales pitch for manufacturers to boast about having the quietest aircraft. And I'll bet that when they quote cabin sound levels, it'll be first or business class, which are ahead of the engines and are quieter. Right, okay, enough about legislation. So what do we do with the recordings that I've made? Well, they were useful to me when I was testing different noise-cancelling headphones for use travelling. I ended up with Sony over-the-ear WH-1000XM4s, which my wife had just purchased. Anyway, more about that later. So you've seen and heard what's in my database. I recorded cabin sound pressure levels on a Samsung Galaxy M62 smartphone running Android 13 using the built-in microphone and using the Bosch INVH sound pressure level recording app. All recordings were A-weighted or all were LEQ. All recordings were in economy and I waited for level flight at cruise altitude with no meal service and a period of at least 60 seconds with limited passenger interruptions. I visually allowed the LAEQ or the equivalent integrated sound level energy measurements to stabilise, then recorded that level. Audio was recorded using a Sony ICD SX713 stereo voice recorder using a professional windsock and PCM high bitrate recordings. I tried to keep the levels the same across recordings, but there could be some variance because it has taken me 12 months to compile this database. I was extremely gratified, I must say, to read that my dodgy findings agreed almost perfectly in rank and in level with a published paper called The Assessment of In-Cabin Noise of Wide-Body Aircrafts. The study found that the sound pressure levels in the Airbus A380 were the lowest and the levels inside an Airbus A350 were the highest. So, how do you use these sound recordings? Well, my method's approximate, but here's what I did. You play back the relevant 30 seconds of cabin noise on your home PC speakers. You have your phone sound level app running and you have it at the same distance from the speakers as your ears. Adjust your computer speaker volume to achieve the same sound pressure level that my recordings indicate. Then you can test different noise cancelling devices, from earplugs to earbuds, earpods to over-the-ear noise cancelling headphones like the Apple, Sennheiser, Bose and my Sonys. You'll be surprised just how noisy planes are. Don't be surprised if your speakers on your computer can't produce sufficient volume to match my recorded sound levels. I use a Logitech Z623 on my PC, which are THX certified, and they are loud. Still, the numbers don't lie. Plane cabins are noisy. So, look, I hope you've found this video a little bit useful, helpful, and it's something that's a bit different for me. But anyway, thanks for watching.